Hey, it's Jason with 4W Knives. Project today is going to be taking some roller chain and making a father-son bull cutter knife set. I've done bull cutters on here and I've done roller chain, or I've done chain, not roller chain. But I am going to try a little bit different method of this. I'm going to not do a canister. I'm actually going to do a canister on the side, and if this fails, I'm going to use a canister. But I'm going to show the process of me trying to forge weld this chain together and then doing a sand my with it. Back when I first started bladesmithing, I did one with chainsaw, and it turned out okay, but it had a bunch of mess ups in. I think they're called inclusions or something like that. Anyways, it's really hard to do, but I think I've got a decent game plan. These sit inside of each other really well. So I'm going to cut it off on 5 of these links, pinch them together, tack it together, and try to get it forge welded together. If I do that and I'm successful, then I'm going to do sand my with it. Just thought it would give it a little different look. As I said, I am going to do a couple of billets of roller chain in some canisters. If this fails, I'll show my failure, but when it gets time to make a knife, I will jump over to that other billet. So first thing is to get this cleaned up. It's decent shape, but it is greasy and it's nasty, and of course forge welding and muck does not go well together. So there we are. Appreciate you watching. All right, as I cut this chain with the angle grinder, you'll see it moving around, slithering around like a snake. Herein lies the problem with trying to forge weld chain. It's just got so many directions that it can move, and you have to forge weld it not only flatness wise but also sideways to get it all to stay together. I take my time. I'd soak this chain, use the brush and the acetone to get it good and clean. Probably got it as clean as any chain that I've used before. After I get it cleaned up, I use the air hose and make sure I blow out any of the grime or anything that was stuck in between. So when I start this process, it's clean, and that was one thing I wanted to make sure of. I tack it together, and I try to get a pretty close spacing of all my tack welds to limit how much this thing moves. I think if I do this again, I'll go ahead and put a bead all the way across in 4 spots. I just didn't want to have to deal with any of the weld afterwards. So I get it welded up, spray it with some WD-40, and then I go to start my forge welding process. My plan for this process, which I thought was a solid one, was to get it up to near forge welding temperatures and then hit it on the side. These are not hard tacks or hard hits. It's just to kind of move it closer together. I do this, I reflux it, and then I put it back in. I don't show it on camera because I didn't think I was going to need to, but I do another one of these and I get it up to a nice yellow temperature. I absolutely know it was at forge welding temps, and I hit it sideways. After that, I move to the press, do a light press like I would with any Damascus, and then I go to the side of it and I get heavier after that. The first few presses, I thought I had this nailed. As I switched the less aggressive flattening dies with the more aggressive, doubt starts to set in a little bit. I think maybe if I would have gone back to the anvil and hit on the side here, maybe it could have saved it. But as you'll see here right at the last, I show you you can't really see it, but there's a gap right by the tip where one of the chains did not forge weld sideways. It's tacked together some spots, so I try to go back to the press and it just kind of folds it, and I try to save it, and it kind of turns into a mess right here. Honestly, I just don't know what I would have done different, but I'm going to show you the billet here in just a second. All right, wanted to show you the billet. So you can see, I can't touch it, it's still hot, but you can see these areas. It's just as I expected. It's identical to what I've done before. I thought by forging it sideways to begin with a hammer that I might avoid that, but something went wrong. It's complicated, so I'm not going to waste any more time on it. I really think the middle is probably good, but I don't want to take a chance, so I'm just going to use my canisters that I made up, and we'll go that route. All right, after that failure of forge welding that, I brought up my backup piece, and this is my canister Damascus. As you can see, it's a pretty solid billet. There's a couple of areas right over here and a couple others, but it's not bad. This has been cut and restacked. I had way too many voids in the initial forge weld on the canister, so I cut it and restacked it, and I think it came out pretty solid. I've got just enough that if I cut it into 4 pieces, get some 1095, cut it into 2, use it as my core, I should have just enough steel to make the set of bull cutter knives. So I'm gonna go cut it, clean this up really good on a grinder, and then the next film will be on me forge welding the San. We got it to forge welding temperature, so I'll take it to the log splitter press with a light press to begin with, just to help set the welds, and then I will get more aggressive as we go. I have 2 sets of dies. I have these really flat dies that I had a friend, David, milled in flat for me, and then I've got some others that are more aggressive right here that we made them skinnier. They're kind of rounded. They just do a good job of getting a deep press while also moving a little bit of steel outward. Then of course I go to one of my favorite tools on here that happened to be made by David, the roller mill. I get it down to a good workable piece, just under a 1/4 inch thick. All right, so as I do my stock removal here to keep my core centered, I'll mention I'm trying some different video angles. I've rigged up a little stand that I could get it a little bit closer, trying to give a little bit of a bird's eye view. It's here with the porta band, and then also once I get to the grinder, I just like to make my videos a little bit more enjoyable, get you a little more hands-on, I guess. I don't know what you'd call it, but so I'd be curious what you think, if you like these different angles, or if you want me to keep it the way it was. I mean, I want to keep getting better, but it's not easy. I use my phone for all my recording, and just a little app to do all of my editing, so far from professional, but it's kind of like me. It's pretty simple. So once I get the edge down to my center line, I start working on my bevels. Switched over to a fresh belt, and I will gradually work from the edge up to the spine, or the line that I have marked by the spine. If you notice, I'll make a pass and I will look. I'll make a pass and I'll look. I keep doing that same process. That way I can adjust where I put the pressure. I use my left hand to help keep the knife level, and my right hand is what's helping me apply the pressure. I can rotate my left wrist as well, but both are trying to work together to keep the knife stabilized and the bevel even. Doing bevels is probably the most difficult part of knife making. Something that I'm still far from being as good as the pros, but I'm a lot better than I was when I started. You just create a feel. I've always fought the urge to use any type of jigs or anything like that, because I wanted to be able to feel the process and make it be just by my hands. So after I get the heat treat done, I've jumped back on the 2x72 and started my finish grinding. I start off with flat platen, use the bottom wheel to help get all the old scratch marks out, and then I make my way to the rotating platen where I end up getting a pretty good finish. So after a bunch of hand sanding and some handle work, which I didn't have time to show on this one, knives come out pretty good. I've used some 2-ply micarta, black and green, and I was really happy with this handle material choice. It's hard to work, but it's come out beautiful. Did it to a 600 grit sanding and then put in some boiled linseed oil. I was very pleased with it. The knives themselves, or the blade, I thought the pattern came out great. I was really happy with it. I thoroughly appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully next time I'm better.